Good space them, y'all. In this episode of the Citizen Cosmos podcast, I spoke with Kadan, CTO of Komodo platform. We discussed cross-chain swaps, bridges, the role of blockchain in the society, decentralization and its spectrum, K-internet infrastructure, web3, Komodo's future chain in Cosmos, and technical singularity.
What we actually do is we're turning crypto into fiat. We're pushing it into the mainstream financial model.
Bitcoin has failed as an experiment because, in my opinion, crypto as an experiment is just starting out. Blockchain is an experiment, or blockchain tech, crypto, whatever. But Bitcoin, well, it didn't do what it was meant to do.
If we again look at all the different blockchain protocols, projects, etc., we're not interconnected. We're not communicating with each other. We are not using the power of the network.
God created human in his own vision, just like we created computers in our own vision. So I think that the difference between computers and the brain is minimal, and it works exactly in the same way. Before we rocket off into the podcast, here are the latest news from the sponsor of this episode, Cyber. The Cyber Congress DAO has opened the portal, and Atom, ETH, Terra, and Osmo users that meet the requirements can claim their gift and their moon citizenship on sib.ai. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Cosmos podcast. I have Kadan with me today. Kadan is the CTO of Komodo platform, which is a surprise, I guess, for a lot of our listeners. But we will untangle all those surprises as we talk to Kadan. And Kadan, man, welcome to the show.
Hey, Serge. Hey, hello. Thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and also not just for myself, but for the listeners, of course, as well. And tell me, or us rather, how is it that I have a guest from Komodo platform on?
Sure, absolutely. So as you said, my name is Kadan Stadelman. I'm a CTO at Komodo platform and AtomicDEX. So I head up the tech departments at these projects. My background's pretty much cybersecurity, IT, cyber technologies. So I've worked in the government sector for quite some years in the DevOps and SecOps sector, right? So I've been working on intrusion detection system, right? Various means of implementing countermeasures, right? Against hackers, attacks, etc. So coming with this cybersecurity background, etc., I've started engaging with the crypto community, more specifically with Bitcoin and Bitcoin Talk.org, back in 2013, 14, where I then basically really shifted straight into the open source world. I've always been an advocate of open source technologies, etc. And within Komodo and AtomicDEX, I kind of have the opportunity to work on technologies and work with people that kind of share this vision, this ideology, right, in terms of liberalism, freedom, etc. The key focus that Komodo has, and Komodo here is more an open source blockchain technology provider. That's basically how we describe the Komodo vision, the Komodo ethos. In Komodo, you could look at it more like an umbrella, more like the open source soul of the tech field, the tech layer. AtomicDEX is basically good reflection of our key focus, and that's blockchain interoperability. So we've ever since been working on technologies that interconnect different blockchain protocols and different chains. In just for one quick reference, in 2013, 14, we've done the first fully automated cross-chain atomic swap. We've protocoled this on Bitcoin Talk and, for example, the Binance Academy, so very well-known, well-used knowledge center basically for blockchain education, is stating this basically our reference, right, as an important milestone in the atomic swap history and atomic swap technology itself, right? And that's me, that's Komodo, that's AtomicDEX, and I'll add a bit more also regarding the AtomicDEX and specifically, right, why Cosmos, right? How did I land in this podcast, right? So if you've asked this question, let me just straight touch base on this if you don't have any question for now. So you have more, all right. So with the AtomicDEX, we've started really exploring the blockchain protocols from a second and third generation perspective, right? So we know all these Bitcoin-based blockchains and protocols, right? Litecoin, Doge, etc., right? There's thousands literally of Bitcoin and basically this UTXO chain model-based blockchains. With Cosmos and what we as a team, as a project, right, did a lot is that it aligns and matches 100% the Komodo vision. of a multi-chain, right, ecosystem, right? It's not going to be like one chain or two chains. No, it's going to be many chains. And what's more important about these many chains is they got to be interconnected. They got to have ways of intercommunication, of cross-protocol or cross-chain operations, like and events. And focusing like on this vision was always the Komodo vision since we launched in 2015, 2016. We've been like talking about like this vision, and we've seen like Cosmos implement it, right? Make it reality. And what we figured is Cosmos has done it like in a great way, and we have really a flourishing ecosystem. It's growing, right? The growth is like immense with the Cosmos ecosystem. But again, it's kind of a unichain model. It's again IBC chains. It's just the inner internal Cosmos ecosystem. What we thought really is needed, and is something that I've really faced as a problem. I tried to convert BTC into native BTC. Didn't work. I would have had to go to centralized exchanges and go through this KYC, AML, etc. Blah, blah, blah. It's just a hustle. I just wanted to take a couple BTC, transform them straight into Atom. And that's where we said, okay, you know what? We're going to like reprioritize. I mean, we had the Cosmos integration on our roadmap anyway, but we said we're going to like reprioritize this, and we did it. We've basically implemented full IBC compatibility and bridge now the Cosmos ecosystem to Litecoin, to Bitcoin, to Ethereum, to Binance Smart Chain, and all these other blockchain protocols, right? So we're kind of global bridge in that regard.
That is fantastic. Fantastic to hear those things, of course. And before we get into more of like the background questions and everything, just while we're still on the subject, you said Komodo is already IBC compatible already, or not yet, or it's in the milestone?
It is. It's fully like compatible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've been like at the
I didn't know
Cosmoverse
that.
event just a couple weeks ago.
Yes, I did see your panel. I didn't, unfortunately, manage to listen to it yet. I have seen some recaps. Unfortunately, I wasn't in Cosmoverse, and I'm still rewatching some of the panels. I know it's been already 2 weeks, but it's like a huge amount of content, especially with DevCon and that. And like, I'm trying very, 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 very hard to rewatch all of the panels together.
It's too much.
It's too much in terms of the amount. It's not too much in terms of intake. I love
it's
intaking
quality.
thereof.
Yeah, it's quality.
Yes, definitely. But let's talk about those things for sure again. But you mentioned so many things, like my brain in the questions went like in all several directions. I'm gonna try and bring them back together. First of all, you said the reason Cosmos was because the vision was aligned, and I like that already because, well, we talk a lot to our guests about not just the projects that they do, but the vision that they have behind those projects. And also, if I think anybody Googles you up, thanks God to Google. I'm joking, not thanks God to Google, but if anybody does Google you up, there is a lot of things you can find that are talk about privacy, about OPSEC, and I do have a lot of those questions prepared for you as well. But I guess I'm gonna try to first ask you a little bit more about DEXs. And it's true, you mentioned that Komodo was, you said some like old school names, Litecoin, Doge, and I remember that. I remember Komodo in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, the first ever ideas coming up. Do you want to talk a little bit about the history and how it changed since the vision that you guys had in 14, 15 and up to today? What was the journey like? What was the progression like? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So I feel kind of privileged because I had the opportunity to work with a few people that are A, like highly technical, and B, they were all like sharing this fundamental desire of pushing liberty and freedom to the next level, right? So we were all already like parents. We were already like, had like our little families, and we were all working in like either governmental sector or deep financial industry. So I guess you get to see and understand like certain things that make you start questioning like certain things, right? So with crypto back then, with Bitcoin, the initial vision, Satoshi Nakamoto, etc., when we all were still like naive and believing in the good and the hope, etc., we kind of got the feeling, okay, like this is it really, like with Bitcoin, with crypto in general, we all get like this instinct feeling sense that this got the power to not just like change the financial system and change like the monetary basis, but in fact it had the power, and that we all felt this really like 10 years ago, this has the power to really revolutionize society as such, right? the socioeconomic model that's based on the monetary system could be completely like disrupted, changed, revolutionized, literally a big like society revolution. That's like what we were looking at in terms of what would you expect like from crypto, from where do these like early ideological pillars come from? It's from back then, right? And today, I mean, I have to say, speaking now from my personal perspective, I'm not speaking in the name of Komodo or my team, is like that. If I look at it like today, I kind of like still believe, okay, it's a great enhancement, crypto and all of this, right? No question. It's added like a permissionless stack on top of finance. People in Africa, in Latin America, people that don't even have an idea, right? They don't even have these cards. They don't have birth certificates. They can't even do a KYC. I mean, they could like fetch our apps and fetch this stack and they become banked. They have access to the financial world, right? That's great, right? No question. So I'm not questioning that. But what I say is like, I kind of get to feel, okay, we once again have 90% of everything owned by 1% of everyone. So this is like where crypto went kind of to, right? Like, so in these terms, when you ask me where did things move over the years, etc., and I have like to really honestly admit, right? I really think it's the same shit again, just like digital. That's like what the banks, institutions, etc. did, right? They undermined like this tech sector with money. We all bubble and talk about right crypto, freedom, liberty, blah blah blah. But man, foremost, the first thing that we face every day is like what we're doing. We're pegging fiat to crypto, right? So what we actually do is we're turning crypto into fiat. We're pushing it into like the mainstream financial model, right? Like so to touch base again, yeah, on that like question that you had, right, like regarding like a bit more on the technological field. I think our ideology it remains the same, vision remains the same, right? We want to connect these technologies, interconnect them, interbridge them, but then it's not just about the tech. One additional like big factor for us is we learned that by kind of interconnecting the protocols and the blockchains, you really interconnect the communities. At some point, that person will reach out to a person there in these communities. There's trades taking place between them. So by means of technological bridging, we're kind of bridging social layers. And that's a highly essential item. Everyone seems to forget today, right? I'm probably like one of the worst enemies of like metaverse, the way it's planned to be set up, right? Because I feel a lot of things gonna get lost. Obviously, it's gonna bring enhancements and push many things and boost it, but we never should forget about the negative aspects of something.
You're touching on some very, how to say, close to the heart points. So let's talk about that. I mean, this is actually one of the biggest topics, subjects of our podcast is what is really the role of blockchain in society? And not the biggest, of course, but it is a topic that I discuss with a lot of my guests. And sometimes these conversations go very philosophical, not necessarily purely technological. Let's talk about that. And I did actually, when I was trying to research a little bit about you, I did find a lot of that was your topic. I have found several posts written by you in different times where you talk about the role of blockchain, the role of Web 2 and Web 3, and the interaction rather of Web 2 and Web 3, and all the minus sides and the plus sides. And it's interesting that you mentioned bridging communities because it has been numerous times where I've tried to express the opinion and what we're trying to do, for example, at Citizen Cosmos, because we are not actually Cosmos based. We are not actually just considering Cosmos. We are concentrating on decentralization. And to me, all those bridges between blockchains, regardless of whether they are as cool as IBC or not as cool as some multisig, they're gonna have flaws because if they don't bridge the communities, the layer zero that's underneath all that technology, we're gonna have a huge gap. And I love that you're saying that. And here would be the question, I guess, what do you think is the role of blockchain in society? I'm gonna make it a very bold question. I know you can take it many ways. Feel free. It's a hard one.
Yes, that's a hard one, but I believe its role, right, or its roles for society are probably covering multiple aspects of our everyday life. So I look at it at less just a pure technological factor, as you've just heard, as I've just like outlined. So one thing I think it's in what I'm seeing in blockchain, what I see is happening here, well, from a society perspective, is one again like this one word, one term, and it's like opportunity. For many humans, again, like they telling me, oh man, this is just fantastic. It's crazy. It's something, you could have never imagined, like 10 years or even 5 years ago, right? Like people again make a living out of it, right? People don't leave a room essentially. You could do this also, like as a low level software developer or as a very specific expert. You could probably make a living out of something from a room. But with blockchain, it really is the case that this now applies to anyone. Like anyone in the world, regardless of sex, age, gender, geolocation, ethnicity, ideological beliefs. It doesn't matter who or what you are, you can access it. So I guess blockchain's main role in society, for me now, speaking from my perspective, is pushing equality. I think liberty, right, is one thing I focus a lot, right, when it comes like to philosophical aspects of, Gedanken experiments, etc. And there I think that blockchain gives us equality. If we look at it, if we remove the fiat thing, if we remove crypto exchanges and this market that got created around like crypto, if you really just look at crypto, a Bitcoin is a Bitcoin, right? Like no matter how many euros or dollars or whatever it is, right? And if we look at it there, then I think like we're really equal. And at some point, we all have the equal chances, equal parts. As of today, again, it changed. What I'm saying now, it's more like a philosophical thing. If we look at it purely technical, then obviously no one can access mining anymore. That's done, right? Like that's something that's not paying off anymore. So certain things still a bit like harder, a bit trickier. And if you have money, well, you're a bit more equal than the others. That's one thing we have to keep in mind always, that this is something that's corrupting it, and hopefully blockchain can change that a bit.
It's a really touchy subject personally, and I would love to talk more about it if you don't mind. In your opinion, because I'm going to be honest and straight, I don't think that Bitcoin has managed to solve the problem it originally set out to do. It didn't spread the wealth among people. People, like you said yourself, it just became the same shit, but under a different source, under a digital source now. And how do we proceed? How do we fix that? How do we, in your opinion, you said remove all that service market that was created around it. Is there anything else, in your opinion, that can be done today already in order to make it more equal? Maybe Bitcoin has failed as an experiment, because in my opinion, I'll be honest with you, and I know people are going to probably hate me for this, but I think it kind of has. I think crypto as an experiment is just starting out. Blockchain is an experiment, or blockchain tech, crypto, whatever. But Bitcoin, well, it didn't do what it was meant to do. It, like you said yourself, it centralized mining and put everybody together. So what do you think we can do to improve that?
That's a very good question, right? Even looking at Bitcoin, it even enhanced the financial elitarian, right? I'm speaking about banks, central banks, like financial institutions. It's easier for them to move big sums faster than ever before, right? Like to do this, even like, I had an interesting conversation with someone. This is a small off topic, a very small one, but it really relates to this one. I think you're going to like it. Okay, so a year or two ago, there was this time, where crypto was being pushed hard again, etc. And there were like discussions, right, around like various, circles, and various parliaments, various commissions start to basically engage with this topic, right? Start to work on legal frameworks, etc. And there was this question: okay, if governments and if financial institutions wouldn't have wanted Bitcoin to succeed or to survive, they would have easily had the power to just make it illegal at the worst. Easiest path, turn it illegal. No one's going to keep using it. Like, that's it, right? They didn't. Surprisingly, they didn't. So there's the Gedanken experiment, right? This is like a question, an open rhetorical question. It's just like something to keep us questioning things. Well, that's the main thing I always like commit this message is question everything, literally. Okay, so what if Satoshi Nakamoto is actually like a collaboration of leading international banks, financial institutions, etc.? And it's no secret that trust in the financial system is lost. Totally lost, completely. It's gone, right? Like, because the entire mathematics is based on trust. So what if these big institutions, etc., did already work on the next generation of money of the financial world? You could collaborate easily on this, launch it under an anonymous, like, pseudonymous alias. And then with this narrative of freedom, free money, like redistribute wealth, you actually get the smartest hackers and software engineers, mathematicians, physicians, etc., to work on one of the trickiest and most complex technologies for free. On top of this, you kind of get the trust of the entire CryptoPunk communities, and you just take it over in the end. Let them do their thing. Let them build it up. In the end, what are we going to do as a financial system is like we're just like going to invest a bit into the marketing, the PR stuff, the agenda. We're just going to adopt it legally by governments, parliaments, right? And then we're going to like implement it. So a lot of people say, a lot of like leading analysts and a lot of like leaders, right, leading figures in the financial world, they always state and say Bitcoin is like the new gold, right? So why not? I guess like during the gold rush 150 years ago or whenever that was, I mean, people were like mining, going to the, like the tunnels, come back with the gold. They could use the gold, the nuggets. They were paying their beer and like the tools with gold nuggets. This is happening with Bitcoin right now. At some point, central banks might introduce a digital currency and back it with Bitcoin, right? And that's like where we start to kind of understand the potential, not just like Bitcoin. This could be like any protocol, right? I'm talking about. This is really just an example, but the potential, but then also the danger of this technology.
It's a great thing that you mentioned it because, I mean, even with gold, there is the amount of stories where newspapers back in the day were used to overshow the value and expand.
The pump, literally what we call pump and dump, they did it.
Yeah, pump and dump, yeah. Yeah, and there was loads and loads of stories where in San Francisco area or in this Americas areas where it would be used to, like you say, to pump and dump, literally.
The tulip hype, yeah. So many stories.
Yes, exactly. I was just going to bring that up. Yes. It's crazy. And well, let's hope that then if it is, I mean, that story, of course, is and that thing has been going on, that narrative since I think 2011, 12, since I remember for sure.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if it is like that. I think the only thing that saves my hope here is that, well, because it is open source end of the day and we can verify that at least, then we can have alternatives to that.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you said like, what can we do? As kind of like the wrap up question was like, what can we do? If we again look at all the different blockchain protocols, projects, etc., we're not interconnected. We're not communicating with each other. We are not using the power of the network, right? We aren't. Ants. Such a little like insect is using the power of the network. We as humans, we've tremendously failed with this one. With a blockchain ecosystem, it's even worse. We have multiple projects working on the same stuff, same idea, same goal. There's no exchange of knowledge. So we're doing in blockchain what other governments are already doing. You have probably universities in China or in Africa who are researching stuff that's already figured and sorted in the US, but knowledge is not exchanged. There's no interconnection. So why are we not connecting, right? We need to connect to each other. We need to start to kind of like work with each other to push things to the next level. We don't even have a real standardization, like a project organization within the blockchain sphere. So everyone makes interfaces just how they think is the best way. DEXs are different. This is different. There is no unified model. We're not efficient. We all together as a sum, as a totality of the crypto industry, I think it's an issue. That's a problem because it's kind of preventing and blocking crypto really from reaching the next level where we kind of hopefully get closer to real equality, real liberty. But for now, it's 90% about the money. It's about dollars. At the end of the day, that's what matters to most of them. That's what we need to stop. That's what we can do.
I totally agree. I think that it's interesting as you speak. I'm writing like notes down to ask you, and I realize that okay, well, if I start asking you all that, we'll be here not until tomorrow, but until next week. But I'm gonna try and pick at those things. Well, first of all, I mean, what you're talking about is Metcalfe's law, right? It's just a simple thing
Absolutely.
that the power of the network and stopping the maximalism, and it's always we see in Bankless, one of the most popular podcasts now in the space, always asks, well, what is the stupidest thing crypto people do? Maximalism. How can you work against each other when you have a common enemy out there, which you gathered here to do something about, regardless of whether this is an experiment of the Fed? You are here at your own will and you're choosing to do that. Why are you working against yourself? Absolutely agree. It's crazy.
Very well said. Yes.
Another thing you mentioned was pegging to fiat. It's just like, why on earth are we pegging? I mean, why are we doing that? I mean, you want to create a stable coin, create a stable coin. You don't need to peg it to fiat. Jesus, been so many experiments already in crypto. And it really blows my mind when you say that, like, people still, I mean, every time I see that people get in such a hype, oh, yeah, we're going to have more USDC. Oh, we're going to have more USDT. Oh, we're going to have more, I don't know, It's like, okay, guys, and then you wonder why we're not progressing. By the way, in Komodo, do you guys, because I remember specifically that a while ago, and this is years ago, Komodo was referred at one point as a privacy platform. I have checked since then, and I think that you guys have tried to remove that thing from yourself, and you have removed some parts of the code as well, if I'm not mistaken. Can you talk a little bit about that and what is Komodo doing in that direction?
Absolutely.
And how you guys approaching the privacy aspect in general?
So with Komodo, that was like around 2-3 years ago. We started being approached by various centralized platforms, centralized exchanges. Speaking about like a few, like 3 or 4 top 10 exchanges where Komodo is listed and traded. And they've said that it was the problem then, but that over the coming months, the legal landscape is changing and it will be like very tricky for them like to keep the coin listed, etc., which would have hurted like Komodo investors, the Komodo community, people in the community. So what we did, like we had actually a poll. We talked to the community and we figured what can we do, right, like to fix this, because we were full privacy. I mean, it's very, very important. We believe it's like a fundamental right of like humans, right, to have this right of ultimate privacy, and there should be no excuse to bypass that right for privacy. And we said the only way to do it is literally like disable the privacy features within like the Komodo blockchain protocol and have a spin-off out of Komodo, and that was Pirate. R. So there's a coin, there's a token called Pirate. R, quite popular, like it's been like featured by Dollar Vigilant podcast, and it's been great. Yeah, it's been in Anarchapulco, it's been featured there, and so it's kind of like a real anarcho privacy project. On its own, has an own huge team, US, Latin America, Southeast Asia, Europe, so international. And that's what basically happened, is that Pirate kind of like took this over and they are now happy, right? They have a foundation that protects them and they operate out of countries where it's no problem for them to do this. We as Komodo, as the project, we couldn't really do this. So we were all doxxed, right? All devs. So, I mean, just a couple of weeks ago here in Amsterdam, like one of the devs from like the Torpedo project got arrested, and we just don't want to put our teammates into danger, to put them on risk. We believe their safety, their health, that's a higher priority for us than to push certain ideological agendas within the code. I think we've solved it well by kind of standing up to our ideology, and we're an official partner and supporter of the Pirate and our project. But we had to kind of do this. So yeah, to wrap it up, a legal reason, finally, eventually a legal reason forced us to do this.
I do remember now that you talk about R, and I've met with Dollar Vigilante back in 2017 in Lisbon in Steamfest.
Nice.
It was a big thing for me because I used to listen to Anarchapulco, right? I think it's called, for a few years before this, and I was like, wow, and then I met him there, and it was a funny story, but I don't think it's appropriate for now. But so one day I will tell it for sure.
Nice.
Talking about privacy, while we're on the subject of that, you mentioned OPSEC as well. And I mean, privacy is closely tied to security. And I know those are two separate things. And I'm actually a big advocate of trying to separate privacy and security for people who use the internet. But while we're on the topic, I would love to talk a little bit about what are your thoughts about what is called web3 today and the technology that is used underneath that. Do you think that it's okay what we're doing by carry on using DNS, by carry on calling Web3 what is obviously not Web3 sometimes? What are your thoughts on that?
So first of all, I think once again, it's just a big hype, marketing, PR, it's doing the game again. Technically, if you look at things, if we look at the key infrastructure of internet, I mean, this is so heavily outdated. I think it's not even capable of running a real Web3 environment. That's like my opinion on this, right? I mean, there's certain upgrades happening, on a global level, but yet again, then the next big item and factor that everyone seems to forget about is no matter how decentralized the piece of software is, and no matter how decentralized or how peer-to-peer such a DeFi protocol is, at the end of the day, it runs on heavily centralized infrastructure, controlled and regulated by ISPs that are under, governmental, regulatory, etc., etc. So once again, it's a lot of like just sugarcoating, right? We talk about peer-to-peer and decentralization and this and that, but yet again, it's just a handful of organizations and institutions really controlling everything. And if it's hard on hard, I mean, on DNS level, so basically on the domain level thing, it's companies, right? They can just like press a button and it's gone, it's vanished, it's goodbye, right? So once again, I think Web3 is not there. It's happening, obviously, and we're getting there. I think we're building kind of the vision of it. We're kind of building the idea. What we're doing now is everyone is building kind of on a huge proof of concept. But this is like light years away from where we need it to be, right? I think this is going to run on actually on a new type of internet. Tech really needs an upgrade. I mean, on a military level, where technology is already. I mean, for Bitcoin, let's take that as an example. We're still using coding standards, data types, a technical architecture from 20, 30 years ago. I mean, come on, this stuff is dead. At some point, we got to think and talk like, hey, do we maybe need new data types that match and fit like the blockchain technology? We might even need a new computer architecture as such, right? Not like the 3264-bit architecture we're using. We might need something new for Web3, for real Web3, for a real metaverse. I don't think what we have now is going to like work with that.
Have you heard of the term software 2.0 by Andrej Karpathy? Is the ex-AI director at Tesla?
No, to be honest, not yet.
Check this out. We will definitely include the link as well to this episode, and I suggest everybody to really check out. He's an amazing guy. He developed all the. I mean, he's now quit Tesla, if I'm not mistaken. He still works, I think, in the ecosystem, but I think he moved on to something else. But he developed all of those systems for Tesla, and he's a great speaker. He's a great scientist, and he was speaking about a term which is called software 2.0, trying to point out that the software we're using is a bit outdated for the tasks that we need. And you mentioned technology there and centralization of all the services. And for sure, you mentioned like the internet and brings straight away AppRunnet to memory. I mean, the AppRunnet was invented many years before we started to use what we call the internet today. In fact, 30 years in difference, right? And like,
exactly,
where is real military technology today? I mean, I love that. And even going into being honest and even going like, again, cards on a table kind of thing, and going into proof of stake and being a validator, real validator as well. And Hetzner and AWS, the two biggest elephants in the room, that if they just shut down tomorrow. But this is actually my next question, or my next kind of point to you. We as a validator, for example, we are slowly striving to kind of shift the focus from cloud to computing in-house. I'm going to call it like that. And I've spoken recently to one validator, Bro and Bro, and they were mentioning how their big focus now to actually not just shift the servers, but to make sure that they have some source of electricity, some source of energy, which they can not necessarily depend on. But then we have the internet, and that kind of checkmates everybody. The online, status. Does Komodo plan to launch its own chain, a Cosmos chain, or is it just going to be IBC connected? Let's start from far away.
Great question. Okay, so what we figured is we will definitely launch a IBC chain. So we will definitely have a native layer within like the IBC, and we're going to basically use that for the cross protocol operations with all the other chains, so that all IBC users go to the Komodo like IBC layer, and from there you get interconnected, to any other like blockchain protocol or token that you want to interact with. So to answer the question, yes, there will be a Komodo IBC chain.
This is, first of all, great news on its own separately. I'm gonna have to ask when airdrop in a second, but because otherwise,
Sure.
I cannot not ask that. But I'm gonna try to connect to the previous point I was trying to make. Of course, interchain security is not around the corner, but it's kind of around the corner. But still, I would like to know, if you are guys planning your own chain, are you thinking about the whole thing of what we're just speaking about that validators having most of their infrastructure in cloud, centralized cloud services, And do you think yourself, I mean, you seem to be so profound with all those like freedom and liberty ideas, which is a great thing to see, to be honest. Do you think that you guys are going to plan to somehow incentivize maybe people who will try to prove that their infrastructure isn't based in centralized cloud services? Or you're going to like try to for now say, okay, guys, you have to deal with it yourselves, and whatever happens, whatever happens. That's the connection of the questions. Kind of sorry if I made it a bit too vague.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And to be honest with you, we do run a key portion of our infrastructure in the cloud, to really be honest. And we're aware, right, like of the situation, and we're very tech aware. But yeah, to be honest, from one, it's like the DevOps comfort, the flexibility that you get like with the cloud, environment. You're also well secured, right, from a pure security standpoint. Cloud environments offer like a tremendous, I mean, they do this 24/7, right? Experts. They do nothing else. We have a small DevOps team, and they should have enough work just by, managing the cloud infrastructure as such. So looking at that is, I really believe running your own infrastructure is a great thing if you're able to do it well, because it can quickly end up in overkill, right? You have this unstable internet connection, etc., and you're done. Your node becomes offline, or others, or they have disruption, or maybe kind of the delays are like too high. Like you don't know, right? Like so, there's so many factors to take into account. I think nowadays the big problem here is maybe that cloud infrastructure just works better. It's just cheaper and it works better. And for how many years did AWS actually make a loss on AWS? I've read something a couple of years ago, just to get the client base, to get everyone to use it, right? They've been selling it cheaper, but like less than it costed them, and reinvesting crazily. But yeah, to kind of get like this chain of questions that you had around this, that to sum it up, I mean, as a validator, I definitely would want to run my own server, but I would put it into a DC. So I knew it has a great internet connection. So I would look for some good collocated data center. Other services, probably less critical stuff, I'll definitely like probably do it like in a cloud environment. And something that I run at home is something where there's literally like zero trust. Something that's like so critical, so sensitive, where I say, okay, where I would want like to run it at home.
It's amazing that you also mentioned you said kind of the sentence there, whatever is in a DC works better data center. And of course it does. But it's funny that I think it was several years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, when I was speaking to a buddy of mine, a friend of mine, well, more or less a friend. And I don't remember whether he was actually talking out of experience or whether he was just proposing that theoretically. But he was saying that if you take a data center and the same infrastructure in a data center, and outside of it, the internet connection that in a data center that the ISP provides there is different. And it's crazy how, like, but why? Why do you, like, guys, it's obvious that something is fishy out there. And
Yeah, absolutely.
coming back to questions that I wanted to ask. Well, first of all, the chain that you said that you guys might be planning to launch, is that more or less like a further away plan, or is that something already being discussed?
That's something that's already been discussed internally. We're actually like setting up like the tokenomics model for it as we speak. So you can like expect like,
When drop?
drop to like, that's going to be early coming year, but we'll do like on,
Wow, it's an actual answer. It was a joke question, but I love that there is an answer. Sorry to interrupt you.
but that's serious. Yeah. That's going to happen like early mid coming year. We'll have a really good, great, long enough announcement. So people won't like miss it. We'll make sure it's all like airdrop calendars, and we'll let you know explicitly.
Nice, 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 nice. No, it was, of course, kind of like a vague question, but it's nice. Then again, to carry on the topic that we are discussing already about decentralization, in your opinion, when decentralization, or is that even a thing? You know what? I'm going to, of course, like broaden the question. What do you think decentralization is? Is that a spectrum? Are we going to live in a world where everything has to be decentralized, or is true decentralization is to say, well, it's about the choice of the people who want to choose whether they want decentralization or centralization. Where is that spectrum for you and for Komodo maybe as well? Where is that spectrum existing? Where does it stop?
So one factor I look at when it comes to this like centralization, decentralization topic is about like the efficiency factor, and then like the technology stack factor. So right now, if we look even at our like centralized, environments. And we've just like discussed it, right? Like heavily outdated, old, but then also extremely inefficient, right? Like, so you have probably immense amounts of computational resources available that are not being used at all. But they're like part of this internet, of this network. They're here, right? So this really gets me again back like to this perspective that the internet is outdated, technology is outdated. We need something new, something where we are in fact interconnected, new internet connections, right? Like interconnected with satellites. I mean, we're getting there. Starlink is getting there. It's happening, kind of. And I get from a feeling that it's happening, right? Newer generation devices, right? From a mobile perspective, they're very like capable, right? Like of computational resources, memory, cloud interconnection. Many of them have already like native cloud attachment, right? Like, so to me, when decentralization leads me like to many like sub questions. And one of them is, when will like devices and the internet as such be capable of real decentralization? I feel a lot of bigger players, Google Cloud, Amazon Web Services, etc., they already have kind of like a semi decentralization, right? I mean, what's the definition? We'll probably start at the definition of real decentralization, right? It's not just having a couple computers in a network interconnected, because it could be just run by the same person, and but we call it decentralized from an architecture, from a vision, from an idea. But technically, I think there's very little decentralized environments. Probably in the military area, you have a lot of real decentralized technologies and systems. In aviation and space, travel, etc., you have a lot of like real decentralized distributed systems. And I think we're getting there. I think it's coming there. But we will have a major paradigm shift and a major technological revolution. Who knows? With Neuralink, maybe our brains will be the next future computer, because I believe our brain is a great quantum computer, and having a digital interface might actually provide this basis, this foundation, tech to create a real decentralized, like maybe even like a collective mind. Who knows, right? We don't know what's coming, but
I always like saying that I'm not religious at all, and I apologize if I offend anyone in advance. But if we do look in most holy books or scripts, it does mention that God created human in His own vision, just like we created computers in our own vision. So I think that the difference between computers and the brain is minimal, and it works exactly in the same way, and similarities are astonishing. So. Absolutely agree with what you say there.
So the question should be, when technical singularity?
Yes, when technical singularity, exactly. Damn, it's funny that I don't want to talk about specific projects, but we do a lot in one. Anyways, I don't want to like advertise projects. Let's not put it this way. But there are cool projects out there, in my opinion, that are dealing, at least trying to touch on those subjects, and it's great to hear that you're out there thinking about it as well. But by the way, one thing I didn't ask you, which I'm gonna try now to get us down back to earth straight away, to say I love seeing that. How did it come that you, the CTO, became the face of the platform and not? It's rare. It's rare to see that the CTO goes out there and does everything for everybody, which is cool in my opinion. But I'm just curious at how did it happen.
Great. So might be good like to add that I'm a more like a co-role of like CEO, CTO, very typical for IT startups, as you know. So I've basically co-founder and been like one of the tech minds behind the project. So that's how I ended up like, doing, also a lot of like, representational work for the project.
But it's really cool. It was just I was just wondering how, because I didn't know that part. I didn't know that. You see, I do remember Komodo very well at the beginning, but I'll be honest. I think in 2014, Komodo didn't, for some reason, resonance with me as much as some of the other projects did. So as much as I was into that and around it, I wasn't aware of like all the small bits in history.
Yeah, in 2016, when I mean, in 13, 14, we've done like a lot of work. We started like kind of laying out like the ethos, ideology. So that's probably like what you remember. And in 2015, I think we announced like the real chain launch. And I mean, then afterwards, it was like 2, 3 years really like very busy. We were focusing a lot like on the Komodo core, privacy aspect, etc. I mean, CMC 2018-19, Komodo was a top 20 project, right? Like we've been like pushing hard on that angle. But we kind of got back like to the roots and say, look, we gotta like work out AtomicDEX, like this DeFi stack, the interoperability layer, this thing. And that's been like key focus now 7 years, 6 years, and basically third iteration, right? I mean, now it's web compatible, mobile, desktop, literally like for all 99% of all like coin market cap listed coins and tokens are interconnected through Komodo stacks, right? And my personal goal is getting to 100%. Everything, even the chains and tokens that don't have a kind of like standard interfaces. But yeah.
Fantastic. I love that. And by the way, there's one thing I didn't ask you, which was I meant to ask in the beginning, but better late than never. How did you get into blockchain, by the way? I know you worked for the government, you mentioned it. And of course, again, thanks God to the internet, there's a lot of information you can find in the person. But how did you get pilled? And how did you get inside of all that topic?
So we have some coin collectors like in the family. And it was like quite early, right? It was
Me too, by the way. I'm a numismat as well.
Nice.
Yes.
Good. And then like towards 2010, I was always like, cyber freak and known in the family, like as like a hacker and white hat hacker, etc. obviously. And my uncle told me, look, there's like a digital coin now, like, right? So, because we were like coin collectors in the family, and said like there was like a digital coin. And that's how I basically had the first look on it. But that made me like more curious. And that's how I started engaging on Bitcoin talk. That's really how I got into it, like how I got like, like crypto pilled, basically orange pilled. It's like Bitcoin talk community, a few of these people's philosophical views on society got me. Some of the early supporters, I mean, obviously Satoshi's paper itself and his inputs kind of came like from this. You kind of had the feeling, okay, this is like, CryptoPunk, someone like from this community, someone who's like kind of like a digital Che Guevara, right? Like the cyber Che Guevara. These were a lot of people like associated with him. That's how it got me really like into the band. And that was really like for everyone else that I know, like who's co-founded this project, came like from a similar reason, because back then, I mean, you knew there's no money. Like you could never make anything out of this, right? So it was a nice surprise to have that years later, but it wasn't the core motivation. The core motivation was really the people. And that gets me again like to the community aspect, and why I believe it's the most important thing is the community.
What was the first shitcoin you bought? Do you remember?
Well, I didn't buy it. I insta-mined it or ninja mined it over the night.
Nice.
That was like Infinity, and the first like real shit coin. The problem is here, like I'd have to call some coins shit coin that might some people like
Okay, let's call them alternative coins. What was the first alternative coin that you purchased?
Feathercoin?
Acquired.
Did you buy it? Feathercoin?
Feathercoin. Wow, I remember
Feathercoin was the first one.
They were like top. They were really top, like
five.
top 3, top 4 on coin market.
Exactly.
Top 5, yeah, for sure. I remember that. Wow.
On BTCE, BTC-E.com. The troll box, I loved it there.
I'm gonna keep quiet from now on because that is just too many memories now. Quick blitz to wrap it all up. So 3 questions. Give me 3 projects. Let's try to keep it out of the top 20 that you're really interested in following the progress of.
I'm steadily following like Pirate. I mean, it's a top couple hundred projects, but it's a bit of conflict of interest because like involved there. I'm closely following like Tezos. A lot of people like forgot about that project, right? Like from a technological aspect, I like that always a lot. Academic quality, right? Like in code contributors. So technological, very interesting to me. And here I also want to add no financial advice. I distinguish between market and tech. So this is really just like technology. I mean, obviously, my number one like project outside of AtomicDEX and Komodo is Cosmos. Really, my personal like number that I'm like looking at like a lot, and daily, literally, right? Like I'm following contributions, the commits, and just like everything excites me. It's just Cosmos. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie on that. And another one might be Digibyte. I mean, we're friends with them like ever since for years. I've been following the project ever since. There's a few real OGs, BTC OGs. They are super active in the Digibyte community. They're there like for 10 years, literally. I know people there. They've been around like 9 years ago. I've seen them around. So I mean, obviously, it's just generic like UTXO Bitcoin based coin. It's not that exciting, from a pure technological perspective, but what's purely technologically exciting around Dogecoin or Litecoin? You know what I mean? It's the same thing, right? It's just a different currency in a different world, in a different country. That's how I try to look at it. And I like it. I like the community a lot. So these are like the three I'm really, but Cosmos, number one.
Second question. Two things that motivate you to building, to motivate you carry on building what you do, carry on believing that decentralization will come one day. Daily things could be books, could be yoga, whatever, meditation. Two things that is something that you do that keep you motivated.
It's my family. It's my family and the imagination that one day my grandchildren will come visit me. That's the main thing, right? Like I think once you've done the thing, your money, etc., and you get kids, you realize, at least to me, I'm speaking for myself, it's the sense of life. That's really what I like saw in my kids, right? In my mini-me's. And what I'm doing today, it's really because if I go, I want this all to outlive me. I want them to find a better world than I found when I came, right? And I hope that I'll manage to enhance it just even a tiny little bit and make it a little bit better, even if it's just for them. That's my main motivation, my main source of inspiration, to be honest with you.
Fantastic answer. Then the third last question. One person, could be anyone, could be GitHub, could be Twitter, that you would suggest everybody to follow that you find very interesting. Doesn't have to be a crypto person, by the way, but somebody you would say, oh, guys, big suggestion, follow this person or read his book or follow his GitHub, Twitter account, whatever. If you have one, of course, you don't have to have one.
I think from terms of inspiration or motivation, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I go through his Twitter channel, and sometimes there's really posts, there's quotes from others, there's inspiration source. It's Naval on Twitter. I mean, he's got a big follower base. I think he can give you philosophical value on a daily basis by investing 1-2 minutes just reading it. It will give you power. So I recommend that. It's non-technical. It's nothing about money, but it's good. It will enrich your life, I think.
Nice, nice. Of course, we will have all the links and not just the things you mentioned, but of course the Komodo as well, all linked up so everybody can look it up and follow that, of course. Karan, thank you very, 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 very much for finding the time. I hope that as you guys go deeper into the Cosmos Sea, we will get to talk again for sure. I'm sure about it. Thank you very much for finding the time to join me.
I thank you. It was a pleasure, and I hope to be back soon again. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.